Hey guys, this is RuRoniK95 here. Once again, it is time for a movie review for this holiday season. You know, when I think of something come across particularly like how I've been covered back on how I want to look back on how I do my movie reviews that I did in the past as well. Especially like that I reviewed on the holidays particularly. Because this is going to bring me up all to the case, though, particularly. And on top of this, there's the ones. When I come across a movie for a day for this holiday season, because it's technically Christmas time for this December, it's time to basically wrap things up, especially have to do with the holidays, especially for the whole month as well. Because this is the movie. Why I have to bring this up? Well, today's subject for today's movie review is Scrooged, a 1988 movie that stars Bill Murray, John Forsythe, Carol Kane, Michael J. Pollard, Bobcat Goldthwait, Karen Allen, among others in this movie. And what can I say? This movie, in my opinion, is particularly the best hilarious take on Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, of how, despite considering the fact that this movie was directed by Richard Donner, who is responsible for the Superman movie, as well as his other movies he recently worked, such as The Goonies, Lady Hawk, and the Lethal Weapon movies as well. However, the music was composed by Danny Elfman in this particular movie, and yes, this is how what's considered how just to consider Bill Murray, who is basically known for the Ghostbusters movie, came back after his break from the role in movies. He came back particularly just to do a hilarious take on a classic Christmas story by Charles Dickens, especially for a movie like Scrooged, especially. And the box office budget, however, they made a lot of money, particularly, which was $32 million, especially on considering they made a success at for the box office for a movie on there. Because they made this movie for 3 months in both New York City and Hollywood in general. This is basically Bill Murray's comeback movie after his 4-year hiatus, ever since he did the most successful film he is known for, most significantly, Ghostbusters. So that's the big reason why, particularly of how just considered how they wanted to do this movie. So let's get into the review. So this movie starts off on Christmas Eve, particularly with this person named Frank Cross, who is the executive at IBC Television. How he wanted to, I believe, how he wanted his company to air a extravagant live production take on A Christmas Carol on Christmas Eve, particularly of how he's basically how he wanted to do something just for the salary, for the money of how he wanted to do for this particularly, and then he gets basically a little cold-hearted and rude to anyone who's around him, of how something that has to do with Christmas, particularly for this particular one, especially of how he wanted people to get a list like such as the hi-fi stereo and a VCR, particularly. But this wasn't long until he was visited by the ghost of his mentor named Lou Hayward, who died of a heart attack 7 years ago. Particularly of how he has gotten paid for a visit, particularly in this particular movie like this as well, accordingly. and Lou warns Frank that 3 more ghosts will appear to him, of how he could avoid the same fate as well. And then he was visited by the ghost of the Christmas past, but this time as a taxi cab driver, which he was played by David Johannesson, who is the lead singer of the New York Dolls. When he basically takes Frank to see his past in the 1950s, of how found his childhood, particularly of how what he sees his father, particularly of how his father had fallen in love with Claire, which has lost. So he basically prioritized to choose her instead of his television career. When he wanted to see Claire, when he wanted to make amends, of how he quickly sours of how his contempt for a homeless guy named Herman, when the shelter workers, when he came back to the studio, when he told Claire, if you want to save someone, save yourself, particularly. But then this had quite to be cheerful of how this goes, particularly of how what he had a lot to do for, particularly of what. But this wasn't long until he appearance of the Ghost of Christmas Present, who is played by Carol Kane, who is known for Addams Family Values and Princess Bride in that movie as well. But this time depicting it as a fairy in that one, in this particular scene. So when she takes him to the apartment Grace lives in, of how his assistant wanted to struggle, of how she wanted to support her family, including her son Calvin, who was basically remained as a mute. When he had witnessed his father's death, how it shows James ending a humble yet festive holiday with his friends and his wife named Wendy in that one. And yet James had always wanted to defend Frank, despite his cheap gifts always were the refusal to share for the Christmas celebrations, because he refused to have the toast for the holiday celebration, particularly of how this wanted to come by for this one as well, accordingly. And on top of this, the ghost leaves him on any utility space through the sidewalk where he finds froze to death as well. He seems to basically wanted to break through the boarded door, and he ends up on the set of the production of A Christmas Carol, and he didn't notice something of what is going on. When he wanted to retire to the office, he finds a drunken Elliot waiting for Frank, but this time he had a shotgun when he was going to kill Frank for the loss on his job and family. Excuse me. Frank wanted to go in right to the elevator, but then the ghost of Christmas future looking Grim Reaper looking thing waits. When it takes him to the future, where now Calvin has been institutionalized, Claire wanted Frank's words of how his descendant life, of how not viewing any person who is the homeless with disgust. When the ghost shows Frank's cremation ceremony, of how his death, he was locked himself in a casket, particularly. He was trying to escape, particularly, of how he wanted to escape because he wanted to live instead of death. But he found out he was still alive when it was woken from his nightmarish dream as well. It was almost not a good way, but the good thing, he found out it was just a horrible dream in this particular scene. But what he had a lot to do for, particularly when he went out of the elevator, facing Elliot, of how when he was trying to kill Frank, but he's offering him as a low executive position. When Frank returns to on the production set of A Christmas Carol, he secured Bryce under the control room, where breaks into the show's live broadcast to speak on the new appreciation for his lifetime. When he apologizes to Grace, James, and the cast and crew on the air, particularly with the help of the Ghost of Christmas, as well as everybody on the for the network, with the help of the Ghost of Christmas Past. Just as long before Frank and Claire are reunite again, because Calvin went to Frank and spoke for the first time, "God bless us, everyone," and that's how you end this movie, with everyone singing "Put a Little Love in Your Heart." So that's basically the review for a particular holiday movie like Scrooged. In my opinion, this is basically my favorite holiday movie to watch, particularly. What can I say? I loved this movie, and I didn't know that this... Did you know that the guy, the actor, the one who played the Ghost of Christmas Past, he was played by David Johannesson, who is the lead singer of the New York Dolls in that movie, which I didn't notice on there. If the New York Dolls fans could take note on for anyone who has ever listened to the New York Dolls, take note on this movie if you want as well. But overall, this is a comeback to hit the film acting career for Bill Murray after his 4-year hiatus to the big screen as well. It's my favorite holiday movie to be the best of all of this as well. Above all this, particularly, in my opinion, though, is that for my thoughts on this, I think I love this one because despite that this is actually his hilarious take on Christmas Carol from Charles Dickens, this is particularly the modern day version of A Christmas Carol by having it filmed in New York City for a particular movie like Scrooged as well. Unlike other adaptations of Christmas Carol movies, this one particularly is the good example of what this movie had a lot to do, particularly. They filmed this movie for 3 months of how they made this movie, which is after the success of Ghostbusters, particularly, when Bill Murray has recently worked with Glazer and O'Donoghue on reworking on the script whenever they made the production for Scrooged, for what him and Richard Donner had different visions for this holiday movie. When he described the time on this film as a misery as well. This includes his 3 brothers in this movie, such as Brian, John, and Joel. Every numerous celebrity cameos in this particular movie, like Scrooged as well. And what can I get? There's every celebrities, particularly, always have cameos in this particular movie on this one. Like, you got Robert Goulet, as well as David Sanborn, Pat McCormick, in that one as well. And also, this also features Lee Majors, who is known for the television series The $6 Million Man. Wow. If anybody who grew up watching The $6 Million Man, Lee Majors made a cameo in this movie. He was also known in The Fall Guy, if I'm not mistaken, as well. And this movie also stars John Glover in this one as well. We got a big cat, and we also got Jamie Farr, who is known for the CBS television sitcom series MASH in that one as well. What can I say? We got a big all-star cast for a movie like Scrooged as well. Well, technically as that. Well, it's not like the first holiday movies of its kind, but I think what makes it very good for a thing like Scrooged is that this movie is particularly how it's a better, proper way to watch this movie, especially around Christmas time, of how I can come across for this particular way, of how I can realize for this. And yet another kind of way as well. And that's the whole thing that's more different than before as well. Because I've always wanted to come across, particularly for a movie for a day as well. And yeah, I have always wanted to come across for this, for a great holiday movie for a thing as well. And yet this has come across particularly as well. Yeah, because this was filmed for a $32 million budget for a movie like this as well. Come to think of it, that's the reason as well of how they wanted to do this as well, because I've real wanted to notice of how I can realize about that. And despite that, this movie has been given a lot more seasoned tradition like other Christmas movies out there. It's more festive and a lot of enjoyment, just like every other holiday movie that I've ever saw. I think I like this movie way better than horrible Christmas movies from the 2006, such as Unaccompanied Minors and Deck the Halls. But Scrooged, however, I loved this movie particularly. And yes, this is going to be part of your Christmas collection, like you always wanted to watch a movie like this for a good holiday tradition for a day, especially for this movie like Scrooged as well. For overall, I have watched this movie, especially that I have on the DVD of this particular holiday movie like Scrooged, is that I really enjoyed this movie. It's a lot more holiday festive to watch this movie, unlike most other Christmas movies on here, because I had to put this movie on the par with Christmas Story and Elf, as well as any other Christmas movies out there to be enjoyment, just like every other ones that I have ever saw before or since, especially for this movie like that. Excuse me. For the whole thing about this movie, especially of how, despite that this was actually a take on Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol, is that this has to be one of them as well. Unlike most adaptations of A Christmas Carol in other movies in general, this one, however, is the perfect one to remember for this as well, of how I can come by on this one. And yes, this is particularly of how this is like your typical modern day Christmas Carol, especially for a movie like Scrooged in this one as well. And yes, it was a holiday tradition to remember when I watched this movie as well. Particularly of how I can come across, particularly of how I wanted to realize over the fact for this movie. I really enjoyed this movie a lot as well. And my score for this movie, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10 for this movie. Why not? Because I really enjoyed this Christmas movie a lot as well, because I have got into the thing. And also, if I'm going to have this in your recommendations for other ones. Like, if you like Scrooge, there's other holiday movie recommendations on here. On every one of them out there as well. In case you're wondering as well. Of how I have been watching every Christmas movies that I have remembered on every Christmas. As how this has come to the thing for this particular holiday movie like Scrooged. Of how this is a lot what I like to call it as a modern day Christmas Carol type movie. I mean, it's a lot more different than the book from Charles Dickens, but this movie, I loved it a lot, particularly. And it's the reason why I have loved this movie. The reason why I love this particular movie like Scrooged is that I have been coming by for this as well. Because I wanted to review this movie. Especially for a holiday film for a change as well. Just to, like, come to think of it as well. I have been basically wanting to do something as well as I've been wanting to come across as well. Especially, if you ever been want to watch a perfect Christmas movie to watch for the holidays, like if you want to binge watch on something, get it. I highly recommend it. Especially if you have it on DVD or on Blu-ray. This is the perfect movie to watch, especially on December. So, I highly recommend you to check out Scrooged. And this movie will have your holiday dreams come true in this particular holiday Christmas tradition for a day as well. So that's going to be it for my my movie review on Scrooged for today, you guys. Thank you for watching, but before we go, here's what I'm going to say for this one. Looking back on my previous Christmas movie reviews that I've already reviewed, such as A Christmas Story, The Polar Express, as well as Elf, and I forgot to mention A Christmas Story. I have already reviewed those movies in the past, but this wasn't exactly the first time that I wanted to do a review on Scrooge, that I haven't done a review on like this until now. Because, why not? Because I wanted to do a review like Scrooged as well, of how this has got to be the most come to think of it kind of feel for this one as well. Unlike most other Christmas movies that I reviewed, I had to review something that is something new, especially that has to do for the holidays. That's why. Subscribe for content. My Anime Planet Patreon links will be in the description down below. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Let me like if you know as well. Smack the like button if you enjoyed the video, and also be sure to click on the subscribe button. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, RuRoniK95. Feel free to join my channel, especially if you're new to my channel as a newcomer. Smack the notifications bell button. Be sure to get notified also as well for more latest updates on here. Keep you updated as well. And that's all I have what I got for today. Wow, this is the first time I finally get to do a movie review like Scrooged for the very first time, because why not? Because I wanted to review a Christmas movie for this holiday season, just to cater up like this as well. Silky smooth for you, though. Because I have been reviewing Christmas movies as well as likewise, as well as reviewing Christmas specials, likewise, as well as reviewing episodes that are set around Christmas in cartoons, and reviewing and ranking episodes set around Christmas in anime likewise as well. But I have gone back to do some reviewing the regular Christmas movies like we see as well. And not to mention, I've already looked back on my movie review where I reviewed the first 2 Home Alone movies in the past, back in 2018 as well, which I have got the feeling that as well. Not to mention that I forgot, I've also reviewed The Santa Claus with Tim Allen back in 2020 as well, which I remembered in the past as well. That's why I have to do movie reviews for this holiday season. That's why. This is Rurouni K95 saying thank you for watching my video, and I'm glad you liked it. I hope you enjoy it. Hope to see you soon for the next video. Hope you have a great day. This is Rurouni K95 signing off, and thank you for watching my video, and I will see you soon for more videos. Take care. Bye.